Okay, so and then finally at the end, I just have a couple of opportunities that we'll talk about in terms of the next meetup and some other things that are going on with ICRL. So let me just get to it. And again, I still there are some folks who have their videos on. I'll start turning those off if you need that on. Let me know. We're definitely getting those turned off here. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And oops, get that last one. Okay, excellent. So it is truly a pleasure for me to introduce Rui. He's somebody that I met about a year ago through a common friend, and I had the opportunity to listen to him talk I think it was at the beginning of this year, maybe at the end of last year. And it was really an exciting opportunity. It was a fantastic talk. And as we discussed the idea of him coming and giving a talk at one of our meetups, I was really excited to see this happen. He is an associate professor at Howard University with the research faculty. Or I'm sorry, I should say I believe he's research faculty at George Washington University as part of the Center for Advanced Study on Hominid Paleobiology, which I think is not only just impressive in general, but is one heck of a title to be putting on a business card anywhere. It's just the fact that you can fit it on a card is pretty impressive. He has won several prestigious awards for his, particularly for his approaches, his multidisciplinary approaches to address some of the broader questions regarding biological evolution and greater societal issues. He's a prolific author of over 100 papers in top journals such as Nature. He's got a variety of book chapters that have been written. He's the co-author and in fact, as well as the first author of several books. A couple of note being Learning and Understanding Human Anatomy and Pathology, an Evolution and Developmental Guide for Medical Students, which has been adopted at medical schools around the world, as well as Evolution-Driven Organismal Behavior, a unifying view of life, form, function, mismatches, and trends, which has been listed amongst the best 10 evolutionary books in 2017. So I am going to relinquish the screen here and in fact take myself off the video in general. And Rui, pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Just one comment. Because now I'm co-hosting with you. I think sometimes I see the admin, but I guess you are going to admin people as soon as they come, right? So I don't need to be doing that.
Correct. You don't need to look that up. I'll be on top of that.
Okay. And so now I can share the screen, right? Okay. Okay. So I hope everybody's seeing the screen. And thanks everybody for being here. It's a Saturday afternoon, so it's wonderful that you are here. And I really like the project that Jeff and Brenda are doing. I really like the ideas that I discuss with them, Jeff more physically, but actually after this talk we can even discuss more about projects we can be done or something, right? We had some ideas, but of course with the situation now it was more difficult to do them for now. And so this is a talk I gave for Profs and Paints some time ago that Jeff saw, and he was interested to having me giving it to this group. It's a bit changed since then. And I would say that actually Profs and Paints is an activity that we could try to connect with because it's really for dissemination of science and these ideas to the broader public. And a similar talk like this I will give to Smithsonian Associates in 1 month. It's a bit similar in the context. You probably know what is Smithsonian Associates. It will be in November, but I'm very happy to give it here. And it's about evolution, beliefs, gods and ghosts, as I call it. It's about many types of beliefs, right? But especially it's a naturalistic explanation. Why humans are generally believers, right? Why naturalistically did we arrive where we are now? So, okay, I can do like this. This is part of my book. The title actually was changed, and I'm finishing the book in these weeks. I've been writing it for 5 years, this one. it's really about narratives. Why humans in general make narratives, complex narratives, and believing in them. And it can be religion is one of them. It can be science, can be racism, right? Narratives, I mean, that are complex stories that normally don't have scientific base, right? And so that is what I call about narratives, right? And why humans seem so wired to not only do them, but to believe in them, right? It's not only creating stories, because we can be a storytelling animal, but to believe in many of them. I like to start with this sentence, and I really have to explain. I'm not at all going to, this is not against religion talk. You know, some people get surprised, especially in Europe, when I give a talk, they think I will be much more harsh or something, and I'm not at all. You will see that's not, I actually criticize people like Dawkins that are doing that. But I like that sentence from a Portuguese writer that won the Nobel Prize, right? And he was really against religion in general. But he said, before the creation of the universe, God did nothing, it seems. One day, he decided to create the universe. It is also not known why or for what. According to the Bible, he made the universe in 6 days. 6 days only, 6 days. Then he rested on the 7th day until today. He did nothing ever again. Does this make any sense? So this is really about the narratives, right? For some people, this story makes no sense at all, right? But why, for most people, this story does seem to make sense, right? And this is the kind of questions we will do. Again, this is not a talk against an atheist attack against belief or religion. It's very important to stress that. You have to understand that I give this talk also in Turkey, in many Muslim countries, and so on. So I'm very careful to not attack people, and especially not going like Dawkins saying you are just stupid because you are a believer, right? We are all believers. Dawkins is also a believer in some narratives. Unfortunately, he's a believer of racism and misogyny and all of these things. Everybody knows very well that when he's so much against religion, he's mainly against Islam. That is what he's really, really mainly against, right? So Dawkins is a peculiar case of belief also in a way. So it's a very complicated thing. We are all believers, right? Including myself as an atheist, we believe in other things. And that's what I will explain in this talk, based on data. So what I try to be a bit specific in my books is more to create what I call a philosophical empiricism or empirical philosophy. What does it mean? It's discussing these broader questions, but based on scientific data. It's not just like discussing philosophy, or not even like Hariri does, and I know many people like Hariri and Homo sapiens, but I do think that Hariri still does not show so much data. I want to show the data that explains why these narratives are used in human evolution and human history and so on. This is mainly always based, my book is in data, comparative data between humans, other animals, and so on. I'm really trying to have this niche. I'm not, of course, the only one. Probably you know Jared Diamond. Jared Diamond really does a bit that, and one of my favorite authors, as I will explain. But that is really what we are trying to do, to go away a bit from all these long-standing discussions that they have never ending, because they never use like data to talk about them. So yeah, this is not a criticism of religion, because we are all believers somehow. So I will be criticizing everybody, including myself. Regarding religion per se, there is no doubt that religion justified or led, or at least justified, numerous atrocities, wars, and so on. But also religion as functions, right, that also save many, many lives, as I will explain, and also make people better coping with death, with disease, and so on. And this is based on data, again, right, that I will talk about that. One interesting thing I will say from the beginning is that most people think that religion is related with morality, right? With the idea of morality. But data really shows that that is not at all the case. That is not the case in evolution. That is not the case in human development. That is not at all the case. Morality is a good story, but is not the story related to religion in particular, right? For instance, Michael Shermer said in this book that actually morality has a lot to do with religion. So this is a common thing to say, right? That we increase morality, cooperation, altruism is related with religion. But what I will say, what I will do here again, is to use empirical biological and anthropological data to discuss this kind of subjects, right? And then I will talk a bit about the soul and consciousness, also based on this data, that they are all related. First of all, of course, the study of morality, or good and evil, is just social constructs, right? There is no morality, there is no good and evil. As Michael Sherman said himself, if there were no humans, there will be no evil, right? Like, you can say that earthquakes are bad because they kill people, but earthquakes are not bad. It's just the plates are moving, and that's all. Like, there is nothing about earthquakes that is bad. It's just, it happens to kill humans or not kill humans, depending on where the earthquake is, but there's nothing evil or bad about the earthquake. The same with coronavirus, right? We have now these narratives that coronavirus is a killer virus and etc. Actually, coronavirus is not even a living organism. Does not even have agency. Is a non-living organism that necessarily needs to be in hosts to reproduce. So it's just doing the only thing that viruses can do. It's not trying to kill. Actually, what the coronavirus does not really want is to kill anything, because if the coronavirus kills the host, it disappears, right? So there's, like, you know, these narratives of good and evil are, of course, human constructions. So about morality, of course, it also changes depending on the religion that you are, or even within the same religion. Let's say mainly a Christian country like US, mainly, right? One of the commandments of Moses was you should not kill. But clearly we have killed a lot using religion for a long time. Not only that, most Americans nowadays, 54%, still support the death penalty. The death penalty is saying that actually there are cases that its killing is not so bad, it's justified. It's going against the commandment, but you know, all these things are social constructions depending on the time and so on. What I like is one sentence of Steven Weinberg that said, with or without religion, some people will still behave well and others do evil things, right? We consider evil things. But the peculiar contribution of religion throughout history has been to allow so-called good people to do evil things. One thing is, there are of course psychopaths that will still kill or something, but someone killing and saying, I'm killed because I'm a good Christian or a good Muslim, that is a big difference that religions actually allow. And that is one of the powerful weapons that led to many atrocities, right? That you can justify bad things with so-called good actions, right? Sorry, I always go to that side here. Okay, so what about morality? What is the kind of data that shows that religion is not really so much about morality? First of all is that social psychology studies and psychology studies, one book I really recommend to you is The Psychology of Religion. It's a huge textbook, amazing book, a bit old already, but amazing book. Third edition is also not so old in that sense, or fourth edition. And it really shows with empirical, but really hardcore empirical data, a huge number of studies, that actually there is normally a negative correlation between measures of honesty and willingness to aid poor and religion. So it's not that more religious people will be better to other people, etc. Actually, that's not at all what happens statistically. We can see a case in the States, for instance, right? Who is trying to help more people coming from Mexico with nothing, or people coming from Honduras? Paradoxically, the right conservative Christians are much less willing to allow those people to enter the States and to help them. It's a paradox, because you will think that Christ will go as a case by case, right? Christ was against rules. It was case by case. You will see, do you need or you don't need, etc. But that's not what not all, of course, but the Christian conservative majority is willing to do in this case, right? So, and there are many studies about hypocrisy. Also, it's actually very logical, right? If you are in a religion and you have kind of, let's say, anti-natural goals, like I will not have sex until marriage, or I will not drink any alcohol, etc., it's almost impossible to fulfill. So what you will do is that probably you will lie, and you have a public life and a private life that are a bit different. And there are studies showing that statistically. For instance, one example, 70% of a sample in that book of a Seventh-day Adventist young people, they endorse their search prohibition of premarital sex. They say it's a good thing to do and we should do it, etc. But when they were asked anonymously, 54% of them they admitted that they were having premarital sex. This hypocrisy you don't need to have if you don't believe on those rules, right? Or don't say that you do them. So this is actually kind of logical. And also, of course, and that is a bit the main problem. The main dark side of religion was the positive correlation with ethnocentrism, authoritarianism, dogmatism, social distance, intolerance, etc. And this seems to go more than just psychological, in the sense that it's really physiological also. There are now studies with disgust, for instance, that show that kids that have more disgust with, let's say, something that goes to the floor and they will not eat it because they have disgust, those people in general, of course, then there is also society, but those people in general, those kids, will tend to be more authoritarian, to be more religious and so on. So what we call right wing and left wing, of course, is social, but it's also, there is some physiology there with the tolerance for others or for other things, right? And against the disgust. So it's very interesting. And I will talk about the book that really talks about these subjects, but especially religion, the monotheistic religion, let's say Jewish, Christians, Muslims, of course, intolerance is much higher. Because if you are animist, you believe that things have a purpose or something, well, if you are a polytheistic, okay, there are many gods, I have a god, the others have another god, it's not as good as my god, but still. But if you have a single god, if you are Jewish and you have a single god that shows you are the selected people, others, they don't have a god, or they have fake gods. So you are much more intolerant, right, against the others. And that is a very, very, very well studied phenomenon in monotheistic religions, the rise of intolerance. But it was not always for a bad cause, and I will talk more about that. There was actually a noble purpose in the beginning for that kind of intolerance, that led to that intolerance. As Sherman said in this book, absolute morality leads to absolute intolerance. Why be tolerant of those who refuse to accept the truth, your own God, your God commandments, right? So this summarizes a bit that dark side of not only religion, but beliefs, as I will explain. Religion is only a subset of beliefs. People try to overdo religion, but religion is nothing more than a subset. There are other kinds of beliefs. There are conspiracy theories, there are beliefs in ghosts, there are beliefs in Mother Nature. Like, there are many kinds of beliefs. Religion is just a subset of it. We are all believers somehow, and I will explain naturalistically why is that the case. There is this sentence that was written after the 11th September in DC. Nobody really knows who wrote the sentence. It's written on a wall in DC, but it's, "Dear God, save us from the people who believe in you." And again, I'm not criticizing religion in general, because I will say that there are positive aspects, right? Positive in our construction, right? But is saying that dark side of the wars, intolerance, discrimination, etc., that is really a very strong dark side that happened for thousands of years. So another kind of data showing that morality has nothing to do with religion in general, because the way we teach kids morality, and this is very, very well studied. There are many models of teaching of how kids learn morality. What means morality? To do good things, to not kill animals, to blah, blah, blah. They don't involve at all a belief in a God. No, actually kids will only go to that phase much later in human development. The first stage, when they are really small kids, is punishment, right? And obedience. The second one is self-interest. Like in preschool, I will give you a reward if you are good. If you do something good, you can see TV, etc. They don't talk about gods. Mothers and fathers, they don't talk about gods, so the kid is good. That's not at all happening in human evolution or in human development. There is no correlation between believing in gods and trying to get people being more moral or not. There is no data supporting that idea at all. I know it's a nice story again, but that's not correlated with it. Also, because we now know with comparative studies with other animals that other animals, not only humans, have morality. Even if they don't have religion as defined by us, they do have a sense of morality. And this is very well studied also. The book, I will say that for me, I think it really summarizes this better if you want, is Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? By Franz de Waal, that studied bonobos for a long time. And really shows clearly examples of morality and fairness. One striking one is chimpanzees. They do the same task, let's say, in a zoo, and they receive the same object, like let's say banana. Chimpanzee A gets banana, chimpanzee gets B gets banana because they did the same task. Now, they do again the same task, and chimpanzee A gets banana, and chimpanzee B gets only a grape. It's not only that chimpanzee B will complain. No, no, no. It's that chimpanzee A that got the banana and there's nothing to gain by protesting. You will say, give banana to him, to chimpanzee B. Give banana to him also. They have a concept of fairness and morality clearly. And that makes complete sense, you know. Not that they are noble savages or something like Rousseau said. Is that there is no other way, if you are a social animal, to have a concept of some kind of morality, to not warm other waters, and of some kind of fairness. If not, it will collapse. No social system of chimpanzees or bonobos or wolves will collapse if they are cheaters all the time and if they are wrongdoings all the time, right? So it's nothing special. It's completely normal in social animals, right? So chimpanzees clearly have some kind of morality. Also, other animals, so morality not really the main cause of religion or even of belief, right? So what I'm addressing in this talk is what is the origin and why are we hired so much to believe? Religion, I will talk about it as a subset of beliefs. Much later, actually, belief is much before than so-called organized religions and even religions per se, right? Belief is more ample than that. And why are we wired to believe? And the components of belief themselves, other animals don't believe in the sense that I'm defining here. What I'm trying to say about belief is to construct and believe in really complex narratives that are not true, right? Belief is to construct and believe in very complex narratives that are not true. Other animals don't seem to do that at that sense, right? But what the components for that kind of belief, they are present in other animals also. And there are many comparative studies showing this and many books I can recommend if you want. The two main components of a belief are agency and paternity. What is agency? Agency is fundamental for belief, is that you think that a living being or a supernatural being is doing something for a purpose, even if there is no human being or supernatural being doing those things. But you give it an agency that does not exist. Agency is fundamental for belief. And agency is present in many animals. Mainly mammals, all mammals that we know, have some kind of agency, for instance. How do we know that? A simple example that came, I think it's in Behave. I will talk about Behave of Sapolsky, from me the best book that summarizes this kind of experiments and neurobiology and so on. Let's imagine you have zebras in Africa with the tall grass, right, in the savannah. And the tall grass moves. And the zebras will be rational animals and say, oh, it moves because of the wind. There is no agent, there is nothing, it's just the wind. It's an inanimate thing happening. There is no purpose. Nobody wants to kill me. It's just the wind. 99% of the cases, they will be right. It's just the wind. But 1% of the cases, they will be wrong. It's a lion and it's going to kill them. So even if they are right 99% of the cases, right, they will probably be outcompeted because they will die if 1% of the cases they are wrong. So now I ask you, which kind of zebras do you think are being selected during millions and millions of years? Clearly, the super scared, freaky agency zebras, as all animals. What does it mean? That is much better for evolution. If you are wrong 99% of the cases, and you think that it's always a lion going to eat you, but even if you are wrong in almost all the cases, the 1% of the cases you are right, you will escape from the lion and you will not die and you have progeny and so on. So for evolution in general, agency, to give agency even when it does not exist, even exponentially to a 99% rate, it's better in terms of evolution, of survival, right? And this is something that happens in most mammals and so on. In fact, animism. So animism in a racist way, of course, because animism is mainly hunter-gatherers. And this is a sentence I have to use. Hunter-gatherers. What is hunter-gatherers? Probably you all know. They hunt wild animals and they gather wild plants. So it's before agriculture, right? That was the way we lived for 6 million of years until very recently. And the way that chimpanzees live and etc. Human hunter-gatherers, the ones that are still living nowadays, they mostly have animism. And so Europeans and Americans talk like, oh, it's the basal religion or it's a primitive religion, because of course that's the story we want to say, right? It's just a religion, right? A kind of religion. And animism is nothing more than agency. It's saying that a stone or a tree is trying to tell you something, especially that inanimate objects are trying to have a purpose and to tell you something, right? That is really animism. And so this is clearly agency applied to a so-called religion or system of belief. And we know with social psychology studies that kids from a very early age, they are wired to do that. When I say wired, I'm not saying that is instinct, that we have genes to make us be agent. I'm just saying that very easily we click and we begin to do it, because kids also see TV, they hear the father and the mother. Nobody can do a study to put a kid in an island and see if from the beginning he will be animist or agency or doing agency. But kids clearly do it from a very early stage. They draw the sun with eyes. For them, the sun is not an inanimate. No kid will tell you that the sun is an inanimate object. Is there, is an animate object, is doing something for a reason. And we do many, many studies like that. So when you ask kids, why are mountains there? Kids will always tend to say, small kids, well, because the mountain is there, because if it rains, the water comes and we can drink it. Not only they give a purpose that does not exist, because mountains were there much before humans, right? But they will give a purpose that is for us. We call this teleology, right? Humans are obsessed with teleology. Is a purpose of the mountains is something for us. We are the special animal. The mountains are there because of us, to give us water or whatever, right? And kids really are wired to think like that. So again, this came before humans, right? The agency thinking. The second main component of belief is paternicity. What does it mean? Paternicity is a tendency to find meaningful patterns in noise that makes no sense at all. But humans are amazingly good to do this, to find patterns where they don't exist. You can see also this in conspiracy theories, as I will talk about in this talk. There's another system of belief, right? But not only humans do this. Why do we have patternicity? Why are we so obsessed to find patterns, even if they don't exist, to believe in them? Is to get a sense of control. One thing that humans and other animals cannot accept is the randomness of life and death. Right? We don't accept the randomness, that we are not in control of many things we do in life. We want to think we are always in control, but we are not. In most things we are not. I did not choose my genes. I did not choose the country where I was born. I can choose some things. Yes, I have a free will. But many things that will affect me and my health and my diseases and my proneness to have disease A or B came much before I was born, just because my parents were my parents, or the country where I was born, what I was eating. But we don't like to think like that, of that randomness, right? So we create these narratives of paternicity, and other animals do also. So there is this amazing book by Skinner, Superstition in the Pigeon. What he did was experiments with pigeons. That one test was with a box that he gives all the time at the same time, like after 1 minute, he gives food to the pigeons. So the pigeons are happy, they eat the food at those certain moments, and they are happy. Certain is good. But other test was the same thing, but was giving the pigeons food randomly at random intervals of time. And they begin to be crazy. No human or pigeon or whatever likes to understand that he has no control over the food he's eating and over the life he's living. So what happened with the pigeons? They begin to be superstitious. So they begin to do strange rituals, like going to the side or jumping. And if it happened that the food randomly came at the moment they were jumping, they will think, I will jump to get more food. Even if they are wrong most of the cases, again, 99% of the cases, they will still do the same pattern. Why? Because even if it's only 1% right, it gives you a sense of control. Now is the pigeon that is jumping to get the food. He is in control of his life and of his food. And that's what we do when we do paternicity. And we do it a lot. So paternicity and agency, they are the base of religion. But other animals have it, but they don't have the same kind of belief, of complex narratives that we have. So there is something human that we have that other animals don't have, right? They have the components, right, of belief, but they don't really have the kind of belief we have. So what is special in humans is the big question, right? Some people will say, oh, but humans are not like pigeons, you know, it's a bit different. First of all, of course, you know that we are, right? We are irrational animals, as Sapolsky says in this book. We are nothing more than a chimpanzee with a tie, as he says in the book, right? And we know the rituals of superstition that we do. So I don't know if you know Nadal, the tennis player, is number 1 or number 2, he wins a lot. So he does like 12 different touches himself before starting any single game. He's really innovating for adversary, but he does it because he has this superstition. And you can argue like he's number 1 or number 2, he wins almost all the time. So for him, it's like, oh, this is working. You know, this is working. And actually, the study of pigeons was replicated by this Japanese researcher that you see in the picture with humans. And you will think, oh, but humans? No, humans were even worse than pigeons. Actually, he had to take out one woman after just a few minutes because she began to jump compulsively and was really affecting her well-being. She was retired from the test because, again, it was not about food, it was about money, because humans react better with money. But the point is that the money came randomly and people said, oh, I'm jumping, money comes. So they begin to do. We see this also in casinos and so on, right? All these superstitions. So humans are nothing different from animals in that sense. We are just different in the complex narratives we create as the storytelling animal, but also especially that we believe. The craziest thing is that we believe in them, right? Paternity is also together with racism and prejudices. If you think about, of course, religion and other narratives can increase racism against the other, right? We are the ones, the selected ones. The other ones are bad or something. But it's not only religion in per se. So paternity specifically is also very related with that, because you are seeing patterns that don't exist. So let's say if you are racist against Mexicans and you find a Mexican that you see as a good person, you will say, oh, that's an exception, because the pattern is that they are all criminals, right? Because you build that pattern, and humans are really good to confirm patterns that don't exist, confirmation biases. So you just need to meet if you are racist, you just need to meet a Mexican that is a criminal. And if you meet 1,000 Mexicans that are not criminals, you are confirming your bias. That is the real example. So humans are really, really good at confirmation bias and really irrational about that, right? So in everything we do mainly is irrational in that sense, right? So this is really the book of Sapolsky. I really recommend to you if you not read it. It's a big book, but for me it's the second best book of biology ever, really. And I'm including the books of Darwin and everything. But personally, I think, well, the first number 1 is Gun, Germs, and Steel, the Pulitzer Award of Jaron Diamond. It's an amazing, amazing book, especially because it goes against racism and all these stereotypical ideas. But this book about Sapolsky is amazing because it summarizes what we know in neurobiology, psychology, etc., about how we behave, right? And clearly, the main conclusion is that we are truly a Homo irrationalis. Contrary to our own narratives, we actually follow highly irrational narratives, and I will talk more about that. We look for and believe in patterns and agents, patternicity and agency, that don't exist at all. And we normally act, and this is the main thing against the human rational, or the Homo sapiens, as we like to call ourselves. We normally act not based on reason, but based on gut feelings. There are many studies showing that. We act based on gut feelings, but after the fact, we try to rationalize them. And that is actually what is very dangerous also for racism, misogyny, etc. Because contrary to what people think, it's not really stupid people believing in conspiracy theories, etc. No. The most smart people are the most dangerous one, because as Sherman said, even smart people believe weird things because they are skilled, particularly skilled at defending beliefs a posteriori that they arrive for non-smart reasons. One example is Hitler. Hitler has a really non-smart gut feeling that Jews are really bad people and we have to kill them, etc. But then he was smart enough in his own way to write a book to a posteriori create a narrative justifying why they are bad, what they want to do, etc. Mein Kampf. And many people read the book and follow his argumentation. I'm not saying it was a good argumentation or not, because of course it's a stupid belief, but he was smart enough to at least make some sense for a lot of people that believe and still believe in the US in that book, in that narrative. So smart people are particularly dangerous because they can believe in stupid things with their gut feeling, but a posteriori they are better to justify them and rationalize them. And it's a very important thing to know about humans. So let's talk about beliefs. Like, let's say in the US, in the 2000 Harris poll, it was concluded that, let's talk about angels, for instance. 72% of Americans believe in angels. 72%. In that same year, only 45% believe or accept, I don't say believe, I will say accept Darwin's theory of evolution, right? So if you think rationally, more people in the US are believing in a human-like being with wings that we never saw. There was never a bone or a wing found in the fossil record or nothing. There is nothing. And they are believing more in that than they are believing in human evolution, for which we have bones, we have fossils that show the transition between apes and humans. We have fossils, we have physical things, and still they believe more in something that they don't see. So it's really fascinating, right? And again, we can also say that people are stupid because they believe in these things. No, like, you know, many people that are religious, they have Nobel Prizes and so on. So it's not at all about stupidity, right? We are all believers, right? We are all believers. Even the ones that accept evolution, they also believe in their own things, as I will talk here. So what about consciousness? This group is about consciousness, and consciousness has to do with religion and beliefs in the way that, in the sense that the soul, there was this idea that we are humans, we have cells, we have a body, but our soul, our consciousness is more than that. And so there is clearly a God. That was one of the main argumentations for a God. We have more than, we are just not like animals with cells and atoms. We are more than that because we have souls, and animals have no souls. But of course, it's a strange thing to say, right? Why animals will not have souls? Because that is a narrative of religion, right? We are not animals because we are special. And that is the main point I will talk here about this today. But before, it was really difficult to talk about the soul. And Descartes, and much before, of course, they had these dualistic ideas that clearly there is something with the soul, because they could not explain atoms and cells don't form a soul or consciousness. So clearly there is something more that we don't know or cannot see. That is the reductionism, right, of enlightenment. That is the problem, because reductionism is like everything can be explained by the parts. If you know everything about the atom and about the cells, you will understand the whole concept. The problem is that that's not true at all. I always say to my students in biology that it's very simple to explain, and this is what I show in the next slide. What changed in biology? Why actually explaining the existence of consciousness is not at all now a black box anymore in science. It's actually very well explained and actually very well tested empirically. Why? Because now we are going to a more holistic time again of systems biology, for instance. Systems biology is precisely the point that the system, that the total is more than the parts, completely against reductionism. And a clear example, a very easy, funny example, is that my cells, my atoms cannot dance, right? But I can dance. My cells and my atoms cannot eat an avocado, but my total being can eat an avocado. Clearly, our total being is more than the cells. We can do things that our atoms and cells cannot do. The same applies to consciousness. And this is very well studied with empirical studies that actually show they can drug animals, or they can wait until humans get regain consciousness, and they see what is changing. It's not the atoms and the cells that are changing. It's the connections precisely. It's the total is more than the parts. The networks that are activated. So a mouse without consciousness, as you can see here in this image, the neurons are the same, but is having only a few connections of networks between the neurons and so on. And then there is a moment after the drug starts to have less effect, etc., that it begins to be conscious, because there is a network of connections that is special, and that's the click. The same with humans, actually. So it's not more supernatural or metaphysical to talk about the beginning of consciousness. It's just the whole is called emergence in systems biology. The whole is more than the parts, can do things that the parts cannot do. And when certain networks of neurons and cells, etc., connect, then you have consciousness. And they can see this on the minute-based studies. They see this with mice, with humans, and so on. So that mystery, and that's all actually all the time, right? Most beliefs are about things that will one day be explained by science, or perhaps not, right? But many things I always say also to my students, if you would say to someone that does not know nothing about trees, that you put a seed in the floor and with some water, you will get a tree one day, they will say, ha ha ha, that's impossible. How can a seed and water and a few more things give a tree? But we now know it's true, and right, scientifically we have tested it, and we now think it's a normal thing. But before you could have beliefs about things that were not explained, right, before. So also some people say, oh, but there is really a soul, right? There is a soul because we have these near-death experiences that really show systematically in the US that when people are almost dying or think they're almost dying, they see this white light, they see this kind of figure that seems like Jesus or something or God. And so there is something there. But again, there is data showing that really that is not at all the case. That is the case in America, yes. But comparative studies of religion with a huge number of people and a huge number of different religions really show that there is a problem with this narrative. Is that, yes, in America, Christians see this kind of experiences. But if they are in Africa and they believe in other things, they will say that actually they saw a black box or something like that that is in agreement with their belief. As the authors of this study said, right, no Hindus never saw this light or Jesus when they're almost dying or think they're almost dying. The same way, no Christians saw a Hindu deity or a monkey god or something when they're almost dying. It's a social phenomenon. You see what you want to see or you're expected to see, etc. Right? It's very interesting if you think about dreams also, because in dreams normally, we can only see things that exist. We know that many dreams about people that have in South America are about pumas and things like that. Someone that is in the North Pole never saw a puma. You will not dream about the puma. Perhaps you'll dream about a scary kind of cat or something, but not about the puma. Even dreams, you have sometimes you cannot hallucinate only normally with things that kind of exist or similar to what something that you already saw, right? A big spider or a huge spider or something like that. And we know actually why people begin to have these kind of hallucinations when they are almost dying, right? There are many studies about that. They have abnormal functioning of dopamine, oxygen flow, so they begin to have kind of hallucinations, and they will see, again, what they were supposed to see or what their brain is concerned about. Oh, I'm dying, so I want to see God, I want to see Christ, I want to see a light, if they're Christians, and so on. So again, nothing really mysterious there in that sense. So are other animals, do they have a kind of belief or spirituality? Not really the kind of belief in humans, again, not really believing and creating and believing in really complex narratives, complex teleological narratives, right, of purpose and so on. But they do have some kind of belief, especially chimpanzees. We know that they have, because there are different case studies of chimpanzees. More recently, they found really strange cases of chimpanzees in West Africa that do a very strange behavior with stones. They accumulate stones and they put in trees, and they kind of seem to venerate those trees. Really very similar to kind of temples, a kind of temple tree with stones. These rituals are very, very similar. Also, we knew much before with Goodwill that chimpanzees have really strange, seeming like mystical behaviors with some rain. When rain is really powerful, after the rain, they have this kind of rain dance, very similar to the rain dance of so-called tribes or hunter-gatherers in some societies. And also more recently, we saw like other researchers saw, that they also have dances after fires, natural fires. They have also kind of mystical dances. So clearly, they have, and this can seem new to you, but the book I'm writing is really showing a paradox, right? That humans are supposed to be rational, so we are supposed to get more the reality with our reasoning, right? And we do sometimes, like we know more about Mars. We have seen pictures about Mars and everything. We know more about Mars than clearly a chimpanzee knows. So we know more about some kind of reality. But also the amazing reality is that in our daily lives, actually, we are more disconnected from reality. We live much more in the unreal world, in the Peter Pan world, in the Neverland world, in the storytelling animal world than most animals. Most animals live in the world of reality. They eat, they have sex, etc. Right? They don't say we cannot have sex because of God. We cannot have sex because of this. We cannot eat this because it's kosher or it's because it's. They live in a much more world of reality on a daily basis than humans. So the so-called sapiens animal that is supposed to be sapiens and know everything actually lives more in a daily basis an unreal life. But in this case, at least chimpanzees, they also have these unreal moments, right? They see a rain and not only escape from the rain or do like more real hurst things. They also then have these strange deaths that have no connection with the reality. They are seeing something or feeling something that is out of this world, right? That probably transcends this world. So they have this kind of belief and spirituality clearly in somehow, right? But still, this is very different from one thing that is unique in humans. We always try to say things, humans are unique in something, something, something. But as you have seen here, and almost for every single trait, humans are not unique at all. That was my last book, Evolution Driven by Organismal Behavior. But when I was researching for this new book, actually, there is one thing that humans seem to be unique. It's almost impossible to prove it, especially because we use absence of evidence as evidence. But it does seem to be the case that no other animals build and believe in really complex narratives of purpose or a cosmic purpose of life to feel special. This does not seem to be at all what other animals do. And why is that unique in humans? Why humans, what do humans have unique that other animals don't have? If they have paternity, agency, and even some kind of spirituality, why are we the only ones that then build these huge stories like, let's say, the Bible or the Hindu deities or something, that these huge stories, complex stories, teleological stories, and believe in them? Why? And what people, I was thinking I was one of the first when I was writing my book, but then I was reading other books, and actually this is very common idea, that what is unique in humans is the blessing and the curse of knowing the certainty of death. We know we will die no matter what. Other animals clearly have a sense of death. We know chimpanzees and elephants, if they see the bones of a dead family member, they will mourn, they will cry, and all these things. So they know what is death, kind of, right? That animal is no longer in this life. And clearly, when zebras escape from lions, they know that something bad can really happen if the lion catches them, right? But the thing is that there is no evidence showing that animals know that if they escape the lion, if they escape the mountain, not jumping from the mountain, etc., they will die no matter what. When I see my dog, I don't think at all. It's difficult almost to prove. I will have to talk with them. Actually, there was a study that tried to talk with science with Coco, right? And Gogo seemingly said, old people die, right? That will be actually showing that could be the case. But most scientists doubt that animals have an awareness that they will die no matter what in their prime time. That my dog, only 7 months old, she knows she will die no matter what. I can bet that she does not know that, right? And humans know that. Well, when they are kids, perhaps they don't know so much, but humans in their prime time, when they are teenagers or young adults or before 60, before 70, whatever, they know they will die. And this is a blessing and a curse. Blessing because we know more about reality than other animals, because we know we will die no matter what. We cannot escape that. The curse is that is a horrible thing to think every single day. If you think about that every single day, why are we here? Why am I giving this talk? Why do you care about what I'm saying? You will die, you will forget all these things. Even if you have Alzheimer's, you forget even before that. You could just be nihilistic and say, whatever. Nothing makes sense, right? So humans have a mechanism to really take out, not only cope with, but really don't think about death in a single day basis, because that will be crazy. And people that do it, there is actually a pathology called fear of death. People that really have this awareness every single day. And it's huge, 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 and it's really horrible, right? But that will be actually the normal thing to think every single day, right? But because it's the biggest thing, but we have mechanisms to cope with it. But why? What are those mechanisms? So two of them, and these are really related with religion, but also other beliefs. So this is the beginning of belief, not of religion. The beginning of belief, right, is the trying to cope with the idea that we have a certain death. But not only is a certain death, is a certain and mainly random death and random life. That is what we cannot stand. Because not only that we will die, but none of us, me or you, probably knows what we will die of. We have no idea yet, because this mainly will be random, either a gene that came from my parents, or if I took too much sun one day without knowing and I have skin cancer, or if a car comes and crashes you because the driver was alcoholized. We mainly cannot control it or our deaths. So not only being certain of our deaths, but that is mainly random, right? And that's why also COVID is so fearful for us, because it's something random we don't see and kill us. This is the worst thing for humans, right? That gets us crazy, as is getting many people crazy. So what mechanisms did we use to cope? And this is very well described in this book, The Psychology of Religion, again. First, narrative. Again, a huge narrative that we have to believe in to be able to cope with this. Is that, yes, we will die no matter what, but there is another life. And this is all beliefs, all religions, without exception, have a kind of feeling of another life, an afterlife. We will die in this life, but there is another life. That is already like very reassuring. But that's not enough. It's not, oh, we will have another life. So for now, it's just a stupid life here. Let's wait for death. No, that is not enough to cope with it. So we also have narratives that even in this life that we will die, we are special. We are made at the image of God. God has a master plan, or God, or all other beliefs, or Mother Nature, or something, or humanism, saying humans are here to save animals. We have a special belief that we are special animals, that we are here for a purpose, for a master plan, for a reason, for a cosmic purpose of life. There is no cosmic purpose of life. Nobody designed us with a purpose, but we really tend to see that. And not only believers and religious people, not only religious people. When you have romantic love, it's the same. Oh, we were meant to meet each other. We were meant to be. But meant by whom? Who draw the destiny that you are meant to be with this specific person in 7 billion people? Of course, there is not. If you are in Portugal, most likely you will get married with a Portuguese person. If you are in Japan, probably it's just the coincidence and randomness of life. But people really will tend to think about these ideas, or I find my path in life. I find my purpose. There is no cosmic purpose of life. What there is that there is a purpose in life. I'm here because I want to give this talk to you. You came here to hear about these subjects. That is a purpose in life that I make myself, or you make yourself when we wake up. A purpose in life that we define, right, as purposeful animals. But there is no cosmic purpose of life or meaning of life in the sense that it was made by someone or by nature or something to be fulfilled, or for humans that are so special to fill this role. That is what humans believe, and we think that other animals don't believe. I really doubt that a bat or a dog is thinking, oh, we are here, we dogs are here, we bats are here to save the world or to save other animals, or because a master plan of a God, we are so special. Like, imagine that a worm will think like that. You will think that is a crazy worm, right? A worm thinking, oh, I'm here to save the world. I'm here to lead other animals to salvation, to protect the planet. A worm saying that will be absurd. But because we are humans, we will tend to think that the same thing will apply to humans. And that seems logical for us, right? So those are the two main narratives we created. We are special in this life, and anyway, there is another life. And that is all beliefs, mainly teleological narratives, surround those two subjects, right? And religion is one of subset of them. As they say in this book, the greatest uncertainty, death, often regarded as a major stimulus for the origin of religion, clearly, is not morality and so on, is the fear of death, and knowing that is random death. Meaning helps meet an even greater underlying need for control. So this is like superstition. We need to feel some control, right, about life and death. There is a purpose of life, right? And as Nikos Karajantis said, since we cannot change reality, let us change the eyes which see reality. So you see the difference, right? We have this reality we can grasp, that there is death and we cannot escape from it. But then we build all these worlds of unreality to be able to cope with it. So we are even living in a world of more unreality than other animals that don't know about the uncertainty of death. Also, this has to do with the type of questions we ask. We often ask why questions. And actually, that's why our social psychologists manipulate people to say what they want sometimes. So I said, when you ask kids, why are mountains there? We are already leading them to answer a theological answer, right? Oh, because they exist to give us water when it rains. Why questions are teleological? the questions in science in general should be how. How is a earthquake forming? Oh, because the plates move, etc. Because if you say why is a earthquake, you are giving it a reason, a purpose. And what will people, like say in Afghanistan, say many times? Oh, the earthquake is here to punish a woman because they show the face. Or Christians could say is here to COVID to punish people because we accept homosexuality or whatever. You know, we give purposes because we have these why questions and we are wired to make them, right? So within these why questions, do they really make sense? Of course, we know scientifically they don't make sense, right? These narratives we have that we are so special, etc. First of all, we wanted to be so special, to be the center of the world. Then finally, humans have to see that actually the Earth is moving around the sun. Of course, then even believers will say, oh, that's just a small detail, it's not important. That does not change the narrative I believe in, right? Because confirmation biases cannot be destructed with evidence, right? But let's talk about the Earth, that humans are, God made humans as a special animal. God made Earth and universe for humans and so on. If you see the Earth as a 24-hour existence, humans, our species, I'm not saying humans, our species Homo sapiens only appeared in the 4 seconds before midnight. So what the hell? What other time were all the animals and mountains existing without humans? If the world and Earth was made for humans, that makes no sense at all. We seem more like a last minute invited guest that just appeared there by coincidence. Not at all that the world and the Earth was made for us, right? But again, these science facts will not change beliefs because confirmation biases will still prevail. There is actually a whole field that discusses these subjects. Denying Death is a really amazing book about this field. This field is called Terror Management Theory, and really shows how death and thinking about death and the fear of death affect us in a daily basis. We try to not think about it. We try to repress it and to cope with it with these narratives. But still, we don't even are conscious about that. But unconsciously, we are all the time concerned about death. And they do these amazing social experiments to show that. And I think we really should read the book because it shows on a daily basis, and even more disturbing, shows that the fear of death unconsciously can activate even more intolerant and racist ideas. And why is that? Because as they explain, society and culture everywhere is nothing more than a living myth, right? A construction by a group of people of the significance of human life. Like, you know, the American way of life, the European way of life, the Western way of life. So it's a defiant creation of meaning, the shared illusion of permanence, right? That we fit in, we are here, we have this culture, we have this, and this will be forever, Western culture and so on. So, of course, when you activate the fear of death, you will even reinforce more the idea of our group, our society, our culture, and against the other. How do they do these experiments? It's really, as you know, in social psychology, normally you have to lie about what you are doing, because if not, the subjects will know and not answer the questions in a more neutral way. So they will lie about something like, we'll do a study about something A or B, let's say. And they call people and they say, now you wait a bit. And they have 2 groups of people. One will be waiting and seeing a TV that shows something, a documentary or something about death, like a killing or something, or a virus or something like that. The other group will see a TV that shows something, you know, a song or something funny, nothing about death. When the 2 groups go to answer the questions that are, what do you think about Mexicans, let's say? What do you think about Muslims and so on? The group, and they really make the group similar with the same kind of religious people of right wing, left wing, etc. to be a bit similar. The only difference is the TV that they see, the programs that they see. The group that saw death unconsciously, without knowing, they will be much more hardcore racist and so on in the answers, because they are reinforcing the culture and the way of living of them as a way of unconsciously cope with the fear of death. So it's really interesting stuff like that is being done. And the main thing about religion, of course, is, again, as I said, we have to think we are special. We have a purpose of life. We are here as a master plan, not only us humans, that you are special. We think that we are special. I'm part of the master plan of God. That's why I found my path. I was then to be a scientist or to be a singer. You are not done for any of these things. I always say, I am done here because my parents had sex. That's the only realistic thing. But if you want to think that you have a purpose and a master plan, people will say these things, right? And one thing we cannot accept in this sense is that we are just animals, because we see that animals just die in the street, right? They degenerate, and that's all. There is no soul, no nothing. So we are special. We have a soul. We have an afterlife. Humans. Most religions think it's only humans, except a few religions like reincarnation, believing in reincarnation, etc. So this idea is also very dangerous because it disconnects us from nature. We are not part of nature. We don't depend on nature. We are more than nature. We should not show our bodies. We should not do sex in the street. We should not defecate in the street. That's what animals do. So we have all these cultural ideas about what is not being an animal. And religions, especially the ones in the book, monotheistic religions, really hate the idea that we are animals. And everything is a taboo to try to not having these animals. And we see this about evolution. When we say that most Americans don't accept evolution of Darwin, people have to understand one thing. It's not that they don't accept evolution. They know that the coronavirus is changing a bit, not too much. They know that the flu changes a lot. That's why we have flu shots every single year. And they have the flu shots, even if they say they don't believe in evolution. They know that there is some kind of biological evolution, right? The flu changes every year. They don't have a problem with that. What they have problem with is the question, are human beings coming from other animals? That they cannot accept, because that breaks all these narratives about humans being special. That's why people have so many problems with them, right? And that's why Darwin had all the problems that you know that he had about being a monkey and all those stories. So in this book, The Psychology of Religion, they give an example of a really difficult thing and how a function of religion. And again, that's why you see I'm not criticizing religion, because here I completely admit they are completely right about science or naturalistic explanations, that they help not at all in this kind of case. It's one of the worst cases, right? When a mother and a father, especially the mother connection, if there's a very early child, loses a child. This is a horrible thing for a human, right? For other animals also. So how do you cope with this? As they say in the book, naturalistic explanations, as the ones I'm giving in this talk and in my book, are unsatisfactory. They give no hope, they give no future. It's simple, complete, and total termination of the child. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That's why actually many people that don't declare themselves religious, they begin to be religious. Should be the opposite, right? Because if a child dies, it really shows the nonsense and randomness of life. But actually they begin to believe in narratives that are against that reality to be able to cope with it. And how do they do this? They do this like in many ways, but the three main ones that come in the book is the narratives about purpose, of course. Like purpose is a very important narrative always. It's like, oh, there is a purpose for the child of my kid. God like him or like her so much that he wants to be with them in heaven already, right? There is a purpose for that. Or you can say, well, anyway, I will meet my child again in afterlife, right? There is a future, there is a hope. That is very important for humans, like, you know. Or you can say, oh, it's a punishment, you know, I did something bad, or my husband did something wrong, or my family. And you have these narratives that still give a sense of control. If I don't do nothing bad, then the kid will be alive, right? That you have a control that you did not have at all. If, let's say, the kid died for another reason, or for a cancer that was not related at all with what you did during life, you know. So I understand and completely accept that naturalistic explanations cannot help at all in this case. And religion is very important. It helps people to cope, to have less depression, to have less anxiety. We know this, it's studied. So clearly religion has this kind of function. But still, that does not mean that we are not irrational. Having a function does not mean that it is irrational, because these stories still make no sense at all. What do I mean to make no sense at all in a rational way? Let's replace God in these three narratives by a woman. This is a real story, right? You see the woman kidnapping a small child. There are many cases in the world of this, right? So now let's say, oh, there was a purpose. The woman took the child because he really loves that child, and many women and men kidnap children because they really want to have children, and they cannot adopt, so they kidnap children. So she really wanted to have a child, so that was the purpose. But still you will say, okay, but still is a horrible woman, right? She should be punished, she should go to jail. So you see, if it's God, you understand it naturally is a nice God, but if it's a woman kidnapping a child, it's different. Or the second option, in afterlife you will meet, oh, okay, the woman kidnapped your child, but you will see the child again. If she give it back to you, or if the police discovers the child, you will see it again. There is the future, there is the hope. But still you say, it's still a horrible woman, she needs to go to jail, right? That does not, make it better in that sense. Or if you say even worse, oh, the woman took your child to punish because you did not pay your taxes, or your husband did not pay your taxes. You will say, wow, it's really a horrible person, like punishing a child that has nothing to blame for what I did, for a small thing like not paying taxes. But if it's a God, then you accept this narrative as something, well, understandable. Right? So you see the difference. You can have a function, but still the narratives we create. For if a Martian will exist and come here, there will still be really, really, really strange narratives, right? Not Homo sapiens narratives. So we know that for a long time, humans have this kind of beliefs in complex narratives that other animals don't seem to have. At least for 500,000 years, because Neanderthals clearly have them. They have burials. They put people in a certain position after dying with some objects, clearly thinking that they will have an afterlife or something like that, right? So that's not unique in our species for sure. We don't know when this happened. We don't know when this blessing and curse of knowing about death being certain happened. Perhaps 5 million years ago, just after we split from chimpanzees, because they are almost getting there, it seems, but not completely. Or perhaps more recently, 1 million years ago, we don't know. We just know that there was a moment that happened from the split of chimpanzees until before Neanderthals, at least. So to finish, I said I will talk about 1 hour and 10 minutes, so I will try to finish in the next 5 to 10 minutes, and then we have the Q&A. So now the question is, okay, humans have this blessing and curse to know about death being certain and being mainly random. So, but why are we all believers? Why we all believe in something? Why not some humans will not be believers? But actually it's very easy to explain it in terms of biology, evolutionary biology. The ones selected are the ones that have more kids or survive more, right? So now, if I ask you, if you have a group of humans saying, oh, whatever, we will die, so why should I fight? Why should I eat? Why should I reproduce? And they will be completely nihilistic. And you have another group of humans at the same time in history saying, well, but okay, we will die, but there is an afterlife and there is a purpose of life. I am a part of a master plan of a God, and God wants me to fight with other people or to reproduce more so my kind have more people and so on. Who do you think was selected? The believers. There is no way you can compete with believers. I always say, I don't believe in any God. So I believe in other things probably, but I don't believe in any God. So I will not have a motivation to kill for a God, to put a belt and go to a metro and kill a lot of people. I don't have that motivation to fight like that because I don't believe in that kind of specific narrative. So it's very powerful to believe. And there is no doubt that those ones outcompeted so much that almost nobody is a non-believer. When people say I'm not a believer, they mean I'm not a religious believer. But other kinds of beliefs, of course, we all are. We all have paternity, agency, and so on. We have data showing this. Now, this is not again blah, blah, blah. We have data around the world in general. People that are more believers, that are more religious, they have more kids in average. Around the world, this is very well studied. You see a graph here in Germany, but also, of course, you know about the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox Jews. They were just 9% of the population just 11 years ago. Now they are more than 12% of the population, and it's estimated they will be 1/3 of Israel's population in 50 or 45 years. Right? This is an example around the world. More believers normally have more kids. So that, of course, is this natural selection. Not only that, the fighting, right? Also, and so on. And this is a mistake that people do normally in the US, especially in Europe. In Europe, there are many countries like Portugal that have more and more youth that is non-believer, meaning non-religious. And so we think one day Homo sapiens with schools, with books, etc., we will get all non-believers or non-religious people. But that is really an ethnocentric European narrative or perhaps American narrative. Even if in America, the number of religious people is almost stable. But the narrative is that the world will get less religious, but actually it's not true at all. There are studies, very empirical studies showing that right now we have 16% of people in the world that are not religious. 16% of people. In 2060, as you see in the graph here on the right, it's estimated that only 13% of people will be non-religious. Because most people in the world that are having kids precisely are the religious ones, right? In Europe, we have more atheists, but precisely Europe is the place in the world that has less kids in average. So in the end, the people that are having more kids are in Africa, India, and so on, and where almost everybody is a believer, right? So the number in proportion of believers is increasing, not decreasing. This narrative that scientists did actually is completely wrong, because we are ethnocentric and we think that we are rational animals, and we are not, right? Those are the main flaws. And not only that, people that say they are not religious, they are still believing in something. And again, there is data about that. This isn't about Americans. So yes, some Americans, there was a decrease in people that say that they are religious and spiritual. There was a decrease, as you can see on the graph, 59 to 48% in the last years. But at the same time was almost a similar increase of people that declare that they are spiritual, but not religious. So they believe in something, but now the belief will be something like Mother Nature or Gaia, or everything is connected, or the energy, or whatever. As I think Nietzsche said, when humans will stop believing in God, they will believe in anything, because we are believers. We are always believers. So we have this new age spiritual. Now Buddhism is coming back strongly to the West and so on, and that is what happens mainly. The people that say that are not spiritual and not religious in the US is only 6%, and even 6% they will be believers in something, as I am about some things, right? So to finish, I will talk about the evolution of religion itself, of organized religion. It is a much more recent. So belief is one thing, then there is organized religion, then there is religion, then there is organized religion. We know that organized religion mainly came with agriculture and so on. And there is this amazing book I really recommend. The Good Book of Human Nature is two anthropologists, very good anthropologists, reading the Bible and trying to understand anthropologically why were they saying the things that they said. For instance, they say that the story of Adam and Eve and the lost paradise is really to say the difficult moments that came when we went out of being hunter-gatherers to doing agriculture. Of course, the narrative of progress is like now agriculture is the best thing ever. But actually, we know now there is many books about that, Against the Grain and so on, Jared Diamond, that say agriculture is one of the worst things that happened to humans. We decreased the quality of life. We got more sick. We got more famines, more diseases. When you talk about COVID now, infectious diseases don't affect so much nomad people. Of course, they can be affected by them, but they will die, some of them, and then it will just stop there because they will not see other hunter-gatherer groups for months. So the quarantine will always be applied. These diseases can only happen in big agglomerations. That's why social isolation. Big agglomerations that came from agriculture and so on. So all these diseases, these new diseases, the plagues, the famine, they were new. And religious people tried to cope with those things. So they did not have bad purposes all the time about those things. We also see that in the first writings, we already have these narratives about the purpose of life, right? Why we die and the afterlife and so on. And the Epic of Gilgamesh is the first epic story written ever that we have records of. And all these stories you see in the Bible, some people think, oh, these Bible are unique stories. They are not. They are all compiled from all these old texts in Mesopotamia and so on. So Epic of Gilgamesh already has the flood narrative. The Epic of Gilgamesh already has some Adam and Eve, but in a different way. So these were compiled. We were like really wondering about death and writing about it. Wondering is a long time, but writing about it is more recent. And so this notion of progress is what makes us also think that agriculture was better than everything, but it was really important to understand that this progress is also a narrative that does not exist. So when you say, oh, our religions, Christianity, Islam, are more superior to other religions, so that's why the people from Africa, etc., they begin to be Christianized or begin getting Muslims, etc. But that's not true at all. They were converted by force most of the times, and even then they were normally lying. They were not really converted. One clear example of many I could show you is Benin in Africa. Benin was one of the most countries that suffered more with colonization and with slavery. The Christians really hated voodoo. Voodoo is the devil, is pagan. Voodoo was really, really, really ostracized. But still, nowadays, half of the 9 million people in Benin, they practice some kind of voodoo. They continue to have their own beliefs, you know, because you cannot say that one belief is better than the other. Beliefs are beliefs, you know. The story of a virgin having a kid, scientifically, is as much not superior or inferior to a story of a stone talking with someone, right? Or a voodoo entity. They are all beliefs, you know. It's just ethnocentry seeking that our beliefs is better than the other beliefs or more advanced or so on. So I will not talk about this. I will just finish with this part about belief in general, right? It's not only superstition. I talked about that already. Conspiracy theories are also a kind of belief, right? And they are very in vogue now, and both right-wing and left-wing and everything. Conspiracy theories is like superstition. Why do we have conspiracy theories? It's to get a sense of control or against randomness. Let's think about 11 September. Why do we have these conspiracy theories about 11 September? Because it's very difficult to accept that someone coming from Germany, Arabs or whatever, they can kill many Americans like that. They can kill us, the in-group, right? It's difficult to accept that, so we build these narratives. Oh, no, it was the American government. Because then you have some kind of control. You can vote or not vote on them. You can remove them. You have some kind of control. It has to be the in-group with agency, right? Because it cannot be the out-group just coming here and to kill us. The same with COVID. The conspiracy theories about COVID is made by the Chinese in purpose in a lab, etc. It's the same thing. We cannot imagine that a non-living organism can just come here and kill us by the thousands or the millions. We have to have these narratives. No, it was made by humans because humans are the special animal and we can somehow control. We can go fight against the Chinese or whatever. We hate to think that we have no control. So conspiracy theories are just one more phenomenon of that. Ghosts, of course, is a kind of belief. Ghosts have to do also, of course, with the afterlife and these beliefs about afterlife and so on. And then many even so-called left-wing atheist beliefs like humanism, right? Obama was a believer in religion, but also a believer in humanism, let's say, right? Is a believer. And he will say humans are here with the purpose of caring about animals or about minorities or about sick people or something. But humans are not here with any purpose. As worms are not here with any purpose, we just exist. And so, but we create these purposes. So we say we are believers, let's say, but this humanism is still a belief. All these things are belief in the purpose of life, right? And that is the common trend of all these things. So to finish, so talking about that is very important to finish, to talk about the functions of religion, because some people will ask, okay, but why are we religious? I really say, why are we believers? Yes, because those people that believed are much more prone to be selected, to have more kids, to fight more, to survive more, to have more motivation to survive and to fight and to have kids. But now, are there other functions that religion in particular, not beliefs, but just religion in particular, are there some functions? It's very careful, we have to be careful, because evolutionary psychologists, they always want to give function to things that don't exist. They will say that depression has a function, that suicide has a function, and in some cases it might have, but most cases it don't have any function, it just exists. Humans are good enough to be 7 billion people and to lose some people by suicide. We still will be here, right? We don't need to be all of humans, not be optimal all the time. We just need to be good enough as a species to survive, right? So we have to be careful when we talk about functions. But one of the functions of religion that really seems to apply, as I said, is to be able to cope on a daily basis with the randomness and certainty of death, right? There are many studies supporting that idea. Another function, the intolerance, actually came from perhaps a noble thing. When you have big cities in the beginning of the loss of paradise, right, in agriculture, overpopulated cities, etc., Mesopotamia and so on, those people are not normally peaceful with each other, because in tribes, if they see other tribes, they will be sometimes more aggressive. But we have to live now with 10,000 people or something in the place. So you have now religion and enculturation and society and culture to say, we are in an in-group, we are all the same, we are all from the same God, all have the same belief, all have the same leader. So actually it was in a way to pacify people, right? To not have all these problems in the city or in a country or so on. The problem, of course, that we pay is the biggest problem of religion is then that we pay the price of intolerance. Because if it's our own country or our own city with our own God, we are the in group, yes. But what about the others with a fake God? What about the others without our culture? Then we are much more intolerant. And that is the big, bad atrocities that came from religion. The wars, the intolerance, the racism, and so on, that were led by, or at least justified by, religion. And that is a huge price we paid. Amazingly, many religious people, they don't understand that one of the main things that religion did and is doing is actually coping with the crisis of agriculture, right? Of having overpopulation. Again, all these famines, these diseases, etc., that were completely new. Hunter-gatherers normally don't have famines. They have a huge diversity. They don't have clearly this kind of so-called plagues and infectious diseases and so on, killing people by the millions. The stories you see in the Bible really reflect what was happening in the beginning of agriculture and so-called civilizations, right? So religion was a way to cope with this, was a crisis management system that was very useful and still is in many ways. So what happened? They saw all these people dying, let's say, with infectious diseases, but they had no microscopes to see the viruses, to see the bacteria. They only did correlations. They saw, look, in places where there are a lot of fluids, with a lot of garbage, with a lot of menstruation fluids, for instance. Of course, menstruation was also going against the body, to go against women, etc. But it was also a rational thing to say, because they saw the correlation between fluids and propagation of infectious diseases. You know, when there is a flood in the city, people don't die so much with the flood. They die with the diarrhea, etc., that comes from the infectious diseases spread by the water. So they saw these correlations without knowing really why they were happening, and they tried to prevent them. That's why all religions are really paranoid with cleanness. Clean your hands before going to church. Clean your feet before you go into mosque, and so on and so on. So actually, that probably saved millions of lives as a crisis management, and still saves. Right? When we say Muslims normally don't drink alcohol, let's say, and we know how many people in the Western countries die with alcohol or problems related with alcohol, you can see how many lives they are being saved by these narratives about alcohol. The problem is that some of these narratives that make sense before, like Muslims not eating pork, it was completely logical. Eating pork in the desert where the Muslim religion came, Islam came, is very, very dangerous. So they had this rule of not eating pork again. It was a correlation. They did not know why, but it was a correlation. But nowadays, with fridges, with refrigerators, etc., eating pork is just a bit more dangerous than eating other kind of meat. So it's not really dangerous, but they will follow dogmatically, like not eating kosher, not eating pork, and so on, right? Because that is the problem, to follow dogmatically rules that actually made sense a long time ago, but no longer make, many of them, right? But this is an important function of religion that people forget, especially people like Dawkins, the huge crisis management role of it. And as I said, also to fight against stress, fight against mental diseases. When you are almost dying or with a terminal disease, you cope much better, and there are studies about that. With the anxiety, with the stress, you are less suicidal if you believe that there is a God. Actually, social psychologists told me that when women that have a huge bad cancer, let's say women and men, pancreatic cancer, they will say something like, in some cases, of course, God chose the fighters to fight the biggest wars. So I have pancreatic cancer because God made me, because I'm a fighter, I will fight against it. Me personally, if I have a pancreatic cancer, I will try to fight against it, but because I don't believe that I have any God or purpose for it, I will be really, really scared, right? I don't have that power of believing, right? So this is very important to understand. It's a placebo, but it's a very strong placebo effect, religion in that sense. But also we have to say not everything is good in terms of health and crisis management. You also pay a price, especially because of the intolerance. There are many studies showing that Amish people, for instance, that they normally do a lot of inbreeding, or Jewish people that do a lot of inbreeding, they have kind of many diseases that are not so common in other kinds of populations. For instance, Jews are more prone to have breast cancer in women. Amish are much more prone to have dwarfism or muscle dystrophy than the rest of the population in the US. You also pay those prices. Also, family abuse. People that tend to be more conservative and religious, they will accept more family abuse or husband abuse and so on. And there are data also about that. Furthermore, we have to sometimes not confuse the factors of causation. saying that religious people are more healthy because they go to church is a typical example. But actually, if they go to church every Sunday, it means they already have a minimum health, right? If you are in ventilators with COVID, you cannot go to church on Sunday. So clearly, people that go to church on Sunday are more healthy in general than everybody that has COVID, right? Because it includes people that are in ventilators and cannot do that. So you have to be very careful about the causation in some cases. But in general, it does seem to show that believing, especially in the God, being religious, does make you having more health in general. That is true. And so to finish is the last slide. What I would like to say is that we see religion and beliefs as psychologists will say it's not a pathological thing if you believe or you talk, let's say, with a God, or if you believe in a ghost or something like that, you know, because according to our narratives, this is something that is normal because most people do believe and talk with God or so on, right? But one interesting thing is that kids, they believe in imaginary friends. And I don't know if you know, but psychologists actually say it's very good to say to kids that it's okay to believe in imaginary friends. Why? Because imaginary friends encourage them, give them self-esteem and some kind of morality of doing good things, etc. Right? So if you see what kids have with imaginary friends is very much what adults have when they have imaginary stories about God or Mother Nature or whatever. The thing is that when you see an adult being, human being, talking with an imaginary friend, then you are like, oh, it's a bit strange, it's schizophrenia or psychosis. But when they do the same with a God or with another entity or with Mother Nature, right? Then, oh, that's normal, that's not a psychosis, right? So we have to be very careful because if a Martian again existed and come here, you will think, oh, these are all the same case, right? So it's the narrative that we make that is a difference. And so me personally, I'm not a believer, right? So I think belief as a huge importance component in human evolution and in the well-being of many people nowadays. So completely, it's not against religion, this talk. What I'm trying to say is that if my mother believes in God and that helps her to survive or to cope better with a terminal disease, I probably will say that's okay, like it's better for her, right? But me as a person, or let's say my kids, I would prefer, I really prefer to live in a world of reality as much as I can, right? And then to be in the box, as you see in this picture, believing in something that could be like Mickey Mouse or believing in whatever, that will make me cope better with life. Yes, you can cope better if you are also believing in other things, or perhaps if you take drugs or something else. But for me, that will not be the solution, at least in a personal way. This is a more philosophical, personal aspect. And this is because I do think actually that the amazing thing about life is the diversity and the randomness of it. And that I have some free will, not so much, but a small free will. That is for me what makes life beautiful. So I'm not like a nihilistic saying, whatever, this is a horrible life. No, I think what is amazing about life, as Carl Sagan said, is precisely that there is no purpose of life. When I give this talk in Turkey, they always ask me, oh, it's really sad the way you see life, you know, because there is no purpose of life for you. You don't believe in God. You are not part of a master plan. And I say, it depends on the way you see it. For me, I prefer to not be part of a master plan. For me, your way of thinking is a bit more sad because you think you are a part of a master plan. You have no way, no saying on it. You are like in an opera. You are doing the same script every night. You are meant to find this man. You are meant to do this for God. You are meant to, your destiny is already completely traced almost in the way you believe. So I prefer to think that at least I have some free will to also build, and I really think that that is what makes life amazing, the randomness of it, right? The diversity of it, the beautiful life with all these animals, and besides that we're part of nature and not against nature or different from nature. We are part of nature. That, for me, that's what gives me my purpose in life, to know that. So it depends, but it's a psychological, personal thing. So yes, thank you very much. It was a bit more than I was expecting. I think it was about 1 hour and 25 minutes, but I hope I will put my light because it's dark here, as I said. So I put the light so you can see me, and I think we will start with the Q&A.
Yep. So let me just cut in for a moment here and give a little bit of a plan for moving forward. Again, Rui's left the computer, but I'm sure you can hear us. Thank you so much for an amazing talk. And as people have been noting already in the comments, there's no question that there's going to be lots and lots of discussion. I know it's we could go on for hours about this, but what I'd like to do is just have everybody take a moment just to collect our own thoughts before we dive into those questions, for two reasons. One is in a moment, I'm going to share a poll with everybody just to get a little bit of feedback. And I want to do that now because as the discussion goes on, people may have to leave. There won't necessarily be an exact defined end to that discussion time. And so I want to at least put up on the screen for a moment the closing slide with a couple of announcements. And I'm not going to go into them, but I do want to allow you to read them just on your own because you'll see they connect to a piece of the poll, but also to just remind you about some of these points. And then I'll take them down as we have the discussion, and I'll put them back again close to the end. So again, a huge thank you, first of all. Let me launch this poll. So at this point, you should be seeing some questions that are there. There are 3 of them about how did you hear about this meetup? How would you rate the overall value of the meetup? And how would you feel about supporting these in the future, and what would it mean to you? So we'll leave that up for a couple of minutes here. And then I also want to share these announcements, which hopefully everybody is seeing now. Just a single slide over there, and we'll give some thought. And then I will have in the comments the link that's referenced there. So give that a couple of moments and just start thinking about it. Like I said, we'll leave that up for 2 or 3 minutes and just start thinking about the questions you have. The way that we'll handle that is hopefully you'll turn on your video, and you can do that now, although not everybody will see it immediately. And then raise your hand, either if you can do it digitally, that's great. Do that digital hand raise. Or if you just literally raise your hand, I'll do the best that I can to try to keep the order. So indicate that you want to say something, and then I'll start calling on people to share their thoughts with us. So again, just about another minute. And we've got about a 40% voting response so far, which is good. And if we can get that up to 70 or 80%, that would be absolutely fantastic. Note that although I've mentioned a couple of things on that slide about how to get in touch with us, that's a starting point, not an ending point. So if you have thoughts, things that that you'd like to share, definitely reach out to info@icrl.org, or if it's to me personally and you want to tell me what a fantastic haircut I have, jad@icrl.org. Or if you don't like the haircut, that's good to know too. That's fantastic. So we're up to about a 65% response rate on that poll. And about another 30 seconds or so would be my goal for this.
If I can just say something about one of the questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because yesterday I gave a Props and Pines talk, you know, and he told me that before COVID, especially when it was live, paying $10 every Props and Pines is $12, and paying $12 was okay. We had like 200 people. I think the one you saw that I gave, right, was 200 or 150 people or something. But now with COVID, especially, there is so many things happening online that is being killed. Actually, say that you will even perhaps have to stop because people are not willing to pay $10 or $12 anymore because there are so many things. And also, he says that perhaps because there are so many serious things happening, people don't want to get even more anxious with like more hardcore or serious discussions. So yesterday, my talk were only 60 people, when the same talk had 200 people like 2 months ago. I'm just saying this about the paying because it does seem to be a minor thing, but I do think it's affecting a lot. Because there is so many options. There are so many options. So this is something just as a comment.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And let me also, I'm going to unshare that screen now, but there have been several folks who have inquired about the possibility of getting a copy of your slides. So Rui, if you want to, I don't know how you feel about that now, if you want to take a little time to think about it.
There is something actually, I'm recording this actually, because I can actually share for myself, only for my computer, because that's the way automatically it does, right? But I can share the slides, or I can share actually the recording with you.
Yep, and I have the recording as well, and
Okay.
the plan will be to have that available on the ICRL website. So you can see that.
Yeah.
But I know also, Rui, you have a substantially larger set of backup slides in your presentation as well, which the other folks didn't see. So give some thought to whether or not you'd feel comfortable with me providing a link to that. And if you feel okay with that, I can make that available on our website. And if not, then of course it is your intellectual property, as it were. So I don't want to share that if you're not comfortable.
You can share, because you are right. There are many backup. Almost as many, almost as the other ones. So yeah.
Excellent. So for those of you who did ask, we'll make a point of providing a link to that presentation on our website over the next couple of days, hopefully today, but can't promise to that. So as a starting point, Suma, you had raised your hand, and why don't you go ahead, make sure you unmute yourself.
Hi, it was a very fascinating talk. Thanks, Rui.
Thank you very much.
My first question was, I only have one question. What are your thoughts about alternate states of consciousness, like meditation and prayers and other practices? They not only help in reducing stress, but they also sometimes result in alternate states of consciousness. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, it's a very interesting question, because let's see if I remember. There is a book I read, fascinating book that talks about that a lot. It's, I think it's The Self-Made Human or something like that. I can search for you and also give it to Jeff, and you can share. What he says is that the self itself, the consciousness itself, is also a construction of the brain, right? He gives these examples as the same as the eye. You know that the eye, there is a part you cannot see, but the way we reconstruct in our brains is that it seems that we can see everything, right? But it's not the reality that is happening with our eye, right? We have this blind spot. And he says the same applies with consciousness and the self. We construct a self that seems to be current, right? I'm Rui, I'm doing this, and you are Jeff, and you are doing this. That's the way you are. But then many moments in life you say, well, it does not seem to be me doing this, or if I drink alcohol, this is not, because he says that it's also a construction. Mainly what we think we are the self is what others make of us, and we also made a persona. So meaning that according to him, and according to him not, according to many neurobiological studies, there is no continuity of self as we want to construct it, as there is no continuity of the things I'm seeing, right? When you see a TV, it seems a continuity, but there's frames. But then our brain builds it like a continuity. So he says this, even the idea of self or consciousness in that way is not really corresponding to the reality of our lives. But then the alternate states of consciousness, this clearly is well studied. Yeah, in that book of Psychology of Religion, they talk a lot about that, and clearly it's true that we have alternate states, or at least that we behave differently when we have them. Studies, for instance, show that doing yoga or meditation, has many of the benefits that actually religious people have. That's why, again, this is another kind of belief or something like that, in a new age way or something, and it does work. It does work. There is no doubt that meditation, as you probably know now with COVID especially, there are many advices done by doctors, and these are based on experience and data, right? With COVID, they say, one interesting one is don't see the news. It's amazing that we recognize that the news are really what make people nervous, because normally we have negative news more and more to attract people. Not seeing news, but also meditate. Meditate is really a certified thing you can do, precisely, because it does relax you, it does. But one interesting thing that really connects that also with beliefs, I don't know if you know, but in the biggest study ever done with people that do meditation, they asked them what do they feel after meditation, and 36%, so 1/3 is a lot, said that actually they feel connected with nature, they feel that purpose of life. So it's always the same trend, repeating and repeating. They feel connected. They feel their place in nature. They feel their purpose in life. So there is always this connection and this alternate consciousness. They praying, for Tibetan monks, when they pray, they can do amazing things that, of course, I could never do. Like, you know, when they put in the water with really jelly, really cold water, and they can stand it for a long time. Or people that can control fire. I saw it myself in Sri Lanka. They could literally walk on fire, and it was not a bullshit or something. It was really doing that because they have a state of mind that they are not focusing on that at all. They are in a different, transcendent way, right? So this alternate, there is many studies that show that is a reality of it. And I do think it can also be connected. Alternate consciousness can be also perhaps be related with alternate self. This view that everything is continuous, both self and consciousness, is not true at all. Well, with consciousness, I showed the data, right? We can make mice and humans not conscious for moments, clearly, scientifically. So it's not continuous, clearly. But the self then has to use the consciousness to believe that there is a self, a conscious and continuous and homogeneous self that, of course, cannot be true, especially because there are moments in life you're not even conscious at all. So, yeah, very, very interesting question. Yeah.
Interesting question, definitely. Harvey, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I have to explain my what do you call it? My camera is not working, but thank you, Jeff and Rui, for your wonderful discussion. I agree with a great deal of what you say, Rui. I just have a question about how do you explain then things like remote viewing and the success for many people who are capable of showing that what I would call a non-linear experience of consciousness.
Well, the non-linear will be a bit what I talked about, but of course, like that is already going to a direction that many biologists, right, evolutionary biologists or biologists in general, will perhaps say, no, that is not something true, right? That there is no remote viewing. There is the idea that there was, for instance, there are cases we know that actually they were not real, for instance, in some cases. I'm not saying it's not real, actually. I will say something else. But the cases when you seem to be viewing your own body, right? When you are almost dying also, right? Or think you are dying or something like that, and you disconnect from your body. Those were also shown to be social. In religions or in beliefs that they did not have this idea that your soul will go up. Let's say in some parts of Africa, they think that actually your soul, kind of soul, goes down. They did not have at all this jumping and seeing your body from above. So as long as you show that, you are showing that all these things are actually constructed, because if they were not constructed, if there is only one reality and they were real, they will always be the same. You will always see the same light. You will always be your body from above and so on. So culturally is not like that. But there is an amazing book about Da Vinci that said that we don't know yet, right? So again, I cannot exclude things to be possible or real because we don't know everything. Probably before we could say consciousness was not possible scientifically, and now we know it is because of emergence, etc. Right? We don't know everything. For instance, telepathy. Some people think that one day perhaps we can explain why twins seem to have some kind of connection. Perhaps we can explain scientifically, and then it will be, oh, that's okay. But if it's not scientifically, then people will be like, oh, it's supernatural. Remote viewing could be somehow that we could use some capacities that we are not normally aware. And you know this saying, but it's a bit true. We don't use our brain 100%. And the book about Da Vinci is compiling data of real things he did, real things that maps, we know that he did the maps, right? That real things that he did. And the theory is that Da Vinci could use some faculties of the brain, not supernatural, not ghosts, something, some faculties that most humans cannot, because clearly he was not normal at all. The things he did, not only the number of them, the maps that he did, they have no explanation yet, because he did cartographic maps in parts of Italy that were huge, that no human could walk those distances to see it from the perspective he saw it. Of course, he could have helpers. Da Vinci have a lot of helpers, right? Even for the drawing, as you know. But it's difficult sometimes to explain. And some people say you could have some kind of abstraction, precisely as you have when you are meditating, when you are walking on fire. You could have some kind of abstraction that allowed him to see things that are not supernatural, but that our brain actually can eventually do. You know, just think about dogs and about cats. We know now with earthquakes and tsunamis that before we see them, the tsunami, or before the earthquake even happens, they feel it. And it's not like bullshit. This is really well studied. They feel, because of course they can feel things we don't feel. We cannot smell urine and know the meaning of it, right? In that way. So they have feelings and sensations that we don't have. So it's possible that we could have more, like for instance, our brain could do the same thing as dogs and feel more to tsunami before, right? But we don't use them. It's possible that we have them, because if dogs have them, unless they develop them, and cats and everything, no, it does seem to be more like a mammal thing that for some reason we lost, right? So it's possible that there is some kind of remote viewing, that we have this capacity, and it's not supernatural. It's something as a cat knowing about a tsunami, nothing supernatural. They are much more sensitive, right? So I do think it's possible. I always say that's also different with doggies. I would just say dogmatically, no, that's not true. What I can say is that the studies done so far about remote viewing, empirically, they are showing that they are normally constructed with social stories, right? Again, they are not the same in different cultures, but there are examples of Da Vinci and everything that does seem to be that he was using parts of the brain or of consciousness or something that we cannot use. And what we know about meditation and so on is really a bit that, right? With meditation, people can go to a place that normally a normal person, without the training, because it depends on the training also, right? Cannot do. So it's possible, yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rui. I have just one more question that it's been, I just had a discussion with a friend of mine about it. Do you think the universe operates chaotically or randomly?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, you know. And if you enter, actually, my book, I avoid to talk a bit about like this subject in terms of free will and etc. Right? Because some people say, well, destiny actually happens, right? If you are saying that your parents have some genes and the genes can affect your disease or something, so there is some kind of destiny already. You are saying not so much free will, right? And even the free will, I don't know if you know these studies, neurobiological studies, they can be a bit depressing, very interesting, but a bit depressing. You can read also in Behave of Sapolsky's amazing book. Studies that show that, how is it? Okay, they measure the stimulus in the brain to do something, right? And the stimulus comes much before people are consciousness about that, because I think it was a study like that. When you decide which hand you are going to use, you click consciousness, oh, I decide, and you click your hand. But what they show is that the brain decided much before you close your hand. So actually,
yes, I love that experiment. Yes.
Yeah,
wonderful.
almost that there is no free will, because actually you think you are deciding, but you are deciding nothing, because the brain already decided before. So the question you ask is about chaotic system or random system, right? And my view, but this is a much more personal, I don't have the data enough to know about the universe and everything, right? And I do think that the universe will be perhaps the always unanswered question that always give space for religion and belief. Because I guess you can explain almost everything one day with science, but to explain where does the Big Bang come from? If it comes from nothing, it seems crazy. If it comes from something, where does that something come from? But I also say it's the same problem with religion. Okay, the Big Bang comes from God, but where does God come from, right? You know, you will never finish that. But about that, I would say that mainly the way I see, especially evolution, I could talk more about evolution that englobes the earth in general, right? Living being evolution is much more randomness than chaotic. Actually, what we see in our studies, and these are really things we are doing in the lab, is studying the logic of evolution. And we see is always almost a logic, like convergence is repeating itself, because there is not so many ways that you can have anatomical structures. You cannot fly without wings, for instance. There is no flying animal without wings. There is a logic of the system, actually. What we see is much more the randomness of it. Why birds at that moment gain wings? Why insects at that moment? That almost is the type of life, as Stefan Joubert said. If you go back in life, probably life will not be the same. Humans will not exist, etc., etc. Well, humans clearly, because the meteorite will probably not fall down and kill most of the dinosaurs. So probably if there was a type of life, it will be different. So it's more like a randomness than chaotic. Not chaotic. If there was a type of life going back, I'm sure there will be flying animals again, right? And things like that. So it's not chaotic in that sense, but it's random. It's contingent and random. That is my way of viewing life. About the universe is more difficult for me to argue. Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Rui.
thanks. Yeah, let's move on to Vasilios's question.
Hi.
Yes. Hello.
Nice to see you all again. And thanks for the opportunity, and thanks also for the great lecture. I loved it, every moment of it. I was going to ask a question, but I have to diverse and make a comment about the evolution.
Yeah.
There are certain developments quite recent by a guy named Gregory Chaotically, who proves mathematically Darwin. And in the course of doing that, it's quite elaborate, but it's very fun and easy to read. He concludes that the evolution is directed randomness. So there is a randomness, but also there's a direction towards complexity. We don't see evolution going back from complex to simpler systems. And that's the achievement of Chaotically. I put it in the word for people to see. He's Chaotically Gregory, proving Darwin. So it's a new thing, worth looking at it. But my other question was about near-death experiences, because you mentioned in a moment in transparency that near-death experiences are hallucinations. And again, there's supporting evidence on that they are not hallucinations. I was very lucky to be tutored by one of the pioneers on the near-death experiences, Peter Fenning, where he explicitly studies the claims of hallucination and lack of oxygen. So the story is that although these things look like hallucinations, they cannot be, because the mind at that moment cannot function at all. I mean, if we're talking about a genuine near-death experience. So if a non-functioning mind a non-functioning brain, cannot hallucinate. It also has to do with memory. Usually people when hallucinate, they don't have such a clear memory, but it's a technical thing. You can follow his work on that. And also it's Peter, what's his name? Van Lomen. But here is a guy who's talking about the near-death experience. Well, the open question is the role of ketamine. This is still open. I mean, whether or not near-death experiences are produced by ketamine. But near-death experiences also is a very nice tool, a nice, very handle for an expanded science of consciousness and an expanding science per se, which in a way, it points the way to the interconnectedness of things, because the brain can be either thought as a producer of consciousness, that like excreting consciousness, like our stomach excretes acid, but also it can be perceived equally scientifically valuable as a transmitter, as a radio, so to speak. So near-death experience is a very, very nice way to go through towards an expanding science. And talking about expanding science, I would like to invite you all to see and join the Galileo Commission, which is exactly what Rui was talking about, the need of an expanded science free of superstitions and being self-reflective and self-aware of what it's talking about. So ICRL and Brenda and Jeff are part of this initiative, and I would like you to consider it and have a look also. So thank you again for the great lecture. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. And yes, I would like to be part of it. As you can see, the more I'm interested in those questions. About near death, yes. If you see, I did not say that they are hallucinations or they are dopamine and everything. Precisely in my slide, I said there are naturalistic explanations that are coming that are trying to explain why, right? Because there are many of them. I just show two of them. There are other explanations why you will hallucinate or not hallucinate. And I agree with you. It does not really match the definition of hallucination, especially the memory of it, as you say, right? The clear memory. The strongest point I made is that, and this is really strong because it was made with 400 different types of people and huge numbers of people, and the social part of it. Like they are always about something that you will tend to see. So again, but that does not go against what you're saying. it can be a different state of mind or something, but it does seem to be social. What I'm saying, it does not support the idea of a single God, let's say, for instance, because they are all different in different cultures. That's what I was trying. That is the more powerful. The other one I'm saying, what is that there are now naturalistic ways of starting to explain, but clearly there are many ways, and perhaps they can be wrong yet, but perhaps one day they will explain naturalistically, I think, because it's something natural, the brain is natural, right? So what I was saying is that it does seem to be the case that it's a cultural thing. And the same applies with dreams. People are studying dreams, and again, you cannot dream about things that you don't see. Actually, dreams in many cases are about the real life day-to-day basis, that you are concerned and everything. Then you can have crazy stories, surrealistic, but still they have to be based a bit on things that we are aware of. You know, they are not completely random. So again, it's not completely chaotic, I would say. There is a logic actually about the kind of things. Like we have now studies of mice dreaming, etc. And actually they can make mice dream differently depending on the daily experiences that they do to them. Like mice will not dream completely randomly, it seems, right? So, and it makes sense actually in a biological point of view. About the directed randomness, yes, many people try to argue that, right, that there is a directed randomness, right? The problem, of course, and I don't say nothing against directed. What I say is that directed randomness sometimes seems that there is someone directing it, right? There is a designer or something, right? And not in your case. I know that paper does not say that at all. What we now say in biology, and my last book was really about that, is there is in evolution a directed evolution in the sense that people before was like, oh, what a coincidence, let's say, that birds have wings, right? And then actually they really fit very well the behavior that they have, etc., right? Or the niche. But actually now we know about epigenetics. It's not only that the wings form, but epigenetics explain why when you are in an environment, you get adapted to it because you have, as you say, a transmitter, you have signals from it, right? It's more a directed evolution, but still will be a bit random, right? And about the increase of complexity, I do think that people are still divided, and I'm one of the ones that actually will not so much support the idea of there is always an increase of, there is, but it's not because there is a directed way. Stephen Jay Gould really gave an amazing example. The drunk, I don't know if you know, the drunk guy example. If you go out of a bar and you are drunk and walking completely randomly, right? You don't know where you go. You can go right or left or whatever, but you always go out of the bar, right? Because anyway, that's like complexity. World is more complex, always getting more complex, because the first organisms, they have no complexity at all. So there is no other way of going. You cannot go, it's like the Big Bang. You cannot go the other way around. So it's not that there is a trend to getting more complex. It's just because randomly, many animals have to go more complex, but many animals as simple as they were in the beginning, right? Actually, most living and non-living, like the virus, like the coronavirus, etc. Coronavirus is as simple as non-living organisms have been for millions of years. So there was no trend to complexity at all. Coronavirus is actually one of the most simple viruses ever, and is in 2020, right? So I don't think there is a trend to complexity because most organisms are not going to that trend, but some of them clearly go, and there is no way out of going, because if you evolve, normally you evolve for something more complex than the coronavirus and something. That is a drunken hypothesis of Stephen Jay Gould, and I do think it applies. You know, it's like there is only one way to evolve, and it's not coming back. You cannot evolve less or being more simple than the coronavirus almost. Like, you know, that will be almost impossible. So what will be the alternative scientific hypothesis, right? We have to always get more complex or get the same. So that is a bit my idea. I don't see any trend towards complexity or progress or something like that, but that's my way of seeing it. Yeah.
Thanks. Ed, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Great presentation, Ray. I think, you know, you dwelled a lot on religion and belief, and I think, you know, as someone trained in science, I think one of the first things that we try to do is separate belief and bias and, you know, anecdotal stories, you know, like in the Bible that can't be verified. We try to separate all that out and really just look at the phenomena itself. And, you know, you might not be well read in this space, but in parapsychological research, You know, there's actually a number of different phenomena that have been shown to a pretty high probability of being an actual anomaly. And you know, when you start taking individual ones like near-death experience or whatever, and you know, you can say, well, there's a natural, you know, or mechanistic explanation, and you know, skeptics will sort of throw those things out there, but on a piecemeal basis. But when you start looking at the large body of evidence, it's pretty compelling, actually. And you know, I'm talking about things like, well, what I call informational anomalies, and I was just looking online here very quickly and pulled up a few that I can just put in the chat window. But precognition, Daryl Bim has done some very interesting work in this space. Reincarnation memories is another informational anomaly. Like, how did these memories or these this information get into the mind of a child that then is shown to be very accurate? You know, that's another one. There's a whole book written by Russell Targ, who has done extensive research into ESP, and he says, look, you know, this is shown to be true way beyond the, say, standards of proof that we require for things like drugs to be put onto the market and this sort of thing. So, so you know, you start looking at all of this, these studies and all of this evidence, and you know, it's like something's going on there. Pretty, you can be pretty certain something's going on, or maybe not, but it's certainly, you know, science only gets answers to the questions that it dares to ask, right? So when going back to some of the things you've said about religion, you know, there's one of the very strong tenets of many religions is life after death, right? That or maybe the soul pre-existed prior to being born, and the sort of thing. And you know, that's a much harder one to approach. You know, the things that I'm pointing out are informational anomalies that can be measured objectively and tested. But there's actually quite a lot of phenomena as well that is, I would say, is not objective in the scientific sense that you can, you know, like measure, you know, the weight of something to 10 decimal points or whatever like that. It's more of a phenomenological. In other words, there's, and so I think of this, the domain of mind as being something that should not be dismissed as saying, oh, well, it's just pulsing neurons, just forget about it. The domain of mind, of phenomenology, is a realm of study, and like Buddhists and, you know, there's other traditions that have made a science out of polishing the lens of contemplation and looking within. But when you do this, people are seeing things as well, you know, like, and that's how you access some of these informational anomalies, like remote viewing. You go into sort of a semi-trance or meditative state, right, or whatever. So, you know, to me, and this group in particular is about exploring those sorts of things, right? So, you know, to say, well, religion is all just an invention of human, you know, I think is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I would say religion, yeah, lots of stories. They all, you know, disagree with one another. But there's something there as well. People have had experiences, mystical experiences, and experiences of, you know, telepathy, connecting, synchronicities that are very, very difficult on a personal level to explain, except going to some sort of, say, supernatural explanation. And to me, it's the realm of science to take those things out of the supernatural, like you said, and understand not what it is, but like how is this possible? How are these things? How could this work? You know, how could these anomalies be explained through known or maybe to be discovered mechanisms of science, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, it was more of a comment than a question, or a discussion, right? But this group is very, very concerned about trying to understand what the mechanisms might be behind these things that people have been reporting every indigenous culture on the planet. You know, so a lot of religions have sprung from actual experiences that people had with spirit beings and this sort of thing. And then now science says, well, there's no spirit realm, so therefore this is all, you know, just in your mind, which, you know, obviously the mind is the one that's perceiving the phenomena. But, you know, I think there really could be something there, and this needs to be explored in a more serious manner. And, yeah. So I'm just curious to have your reflections on that.
Yeah. I know that the group is about this. I talked with Jeff before, and again, as you can see, I'm not at all saying everything is wrong and this is not true. No, that's not the way I said, actually, right? I said that many things we see now as perhaps paranormal or perhaps anomalies or something like that, many of them probably will be explained one day, right? And then people will say, oh, that's actually not. About the division between science and religion, I think we have to be careful about something, because I do agree that you can be a scientist a scientist and a religious person, and many people say, oh no, only stupid people can be religious. Of course not. Da Vinci was a religious person, like, you know, probably the most amazing human ever. So clearly you can be both, and yeah, you can separate them. You can really believe in God and even be an evolutionist, for instance, and have nothing to do with each other. So, but one thing is different. What we biologists, evolutionary biologists, try to explain is that why, for instance, are humans wired to do some beliefs? Because you can say, yeah, paranormal could be true in some cases, right? But like conspiracy theories, we know that they exist. Why are humans have this tendency to build conspiracy theories? Why humans tend to have all the time the same? Because what you say that there is a common trend. The common trend is that the narratives can be indigenous, can be whatever, but it's always the same again. Afterlife, purpose of life. And naturalistically, actually, we can explain a bit why those stories came. And we know that some of stories came. Some stories can be true, right? But some stories came. We know that the Bible was written by humans, right? We not only that, we know that the Bible was changed in time. So it's not first of all, it came from other texts. Second, the Bible, as we know, it changed a lot. I don't know if you know the example of Maria Magdalena. Maria Magdalena was the most important apostle for in the first Bibles. Then suddenly she began to be even a prostitute, right? So we know that they changed historically. They were made by humans. Perhaps some things that are said in the Bible are true, right? I cannot.
But I guess what I'm saying is this: you're pointing your argument towards religion.
Yeah.
I threw out religion as a teenager. I'm interested in experiential spirituality, you might call it, right?
Yes.
What can I see, sense? But I think the difference is, and so I consider myself a scientist and a mystic, right? Both. But a mystic, not in the sense that I'm studying ancient texts and saying incantations and like that sort of thing. I'm inquisitive, and I want to know what's true and what's real beyond the stories, beyond all of that.
Yes.
Like, what is real? So, so to me, like when a scientist looks, astronomer looks into space, right? You polish a lens, and you know the priests refused to look through the telescope. Galileo couldn't get them to look through the telescope to see the moons of Jupiter, right? Well, they had no right to comment on that, right? Because they didn't have the experience of seeing the moons. And so looking within, what the mystic does is polish the lens of contemplation. And this is a practice. And when you polish that lens, you start to see the world through different eyes, and you start to see phenomena. And so to me, what's interesting is that process of, you know, because science has taken all the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff to study.
Yes.
Whereas looking within this is a whole other thing, but like I said, it's all about, forget religion. It's nothing about religion.
Yes.
This is about getting to the phenomena, right?
Yeah, I understand, and actually, I think a lot about those things in the book I'm writing now, because first of all, you are completely right that there are things we can perhaps perceive, as I said, the example of Da Vinci, perhaps, that are more than, and we have to be outside of the box, because again, as you say, we have the biases of scientists. But if you think even the way we see science now, there are many stories that for most people are completely also paranormal, right? The cat of Schrodinger, for most people, is a paranormal story, but we as scientists, we accept it as reality. The core theory of the universe or the parallel universes, for most people, is science fiction, right? And some really high top physical scholars, they say it's true. So actually, we are at a point that almost so much to believe in something paranormal as to believe in what science say, because when it goes to the universe as a whole, everything seems to be completely out of touch. But one interesting thing, actually, I think you say that scientists take the easy thing, but actually, the more I think about what the problem with science, and that's why so many Americans don't accept evolution, or why so many Americans, because actually the science as a problem is that the reality of the world, the way we see it as scientists, is actually counterintuitive. Because think about this: why don't kids in general or people will not accept evolution of humans coming from monkeys? Because when you are living in a single life, you don't see nothing evolving in terms of big monkeys. Monkeys are not giving rise to apes, right? So actually, think about the sun. What I see is the sun moving. That's not the reality of it, right? The Earth is moving, but actually it's the opposite. For scientists, it's very difficult to convince others because most things that we know as realities of science are actually not common sense. They are against common sense. So actually we are going already outside the box, because most people say, no, but I see the sun moving. Can we say, no, the Earth is moving, right? But actually it's the opposite. If you think about scientists, is not only the easy things. The problem with dissemination of science is that science makes no sense, most of it, especially when you go to the core theory and multiverse. So I agree with you that if we accept that it's possible to have a multiverse or to have a cat of Schrodinger, why can you not accept that perhaps telepathy? You talk about reincarnation. There is a really nice study in a biological journal that talks not about reincarnation, but talks about an amazing thing. I don't remember how they did this, but they measured a kind of memory that came from the worm to the butterfly. Because you would think that the worm and the butterfly could not have any memory together, right? You change completely, even if it's a single animal, right? But you change completely, you metamorphose. And that is the story of the Alice in Wonderland, right? You will have no memory after being a worm, before being a butterfly or whatever. But actually they showed that there was some kind of memory. And this could relate in a naturalistic way. This could relate with epigenetics also. I don't know if you know, but we now know that if the mother is stressed, if the mother eats, the kind of food the mother eats, etc., will not only affect the children, but will affect the grandchildren. So clearly you have an imprint in the grandchildren of something that the mother did much before the grandchildren even existed, right? So there it's possible that some things can remain as imprints, etc. So we'll not be completely unnaturalistic if some of those things will be possible.
Well, I'll tell you just in closing, I studied quantum physics, and what I've learned, and I've also self-studied quantum information science since, and fascinating stuff. Essentially, what we're saying is information cannot be created or destroyed. So that means all the information in the universe that is, was, ever, shall be is here now. Number two is that one atom can hold an infinite amount of information. That's one way of looking at it. David Deutsch, who created quantum computing, he says every atom is entangled with an infinite number of universes. That's another way of looking at it. But essentially, and every atom, even a handful of atoms, like 200 atoms, can make a powerful quantum computer. So you have this vast computational capacity inherent in the atoms of the universe. And also the other interesting thing is atoms are entangled. They share information with other entangled atoms. And everything in the universe is at least weakly entangled, going back to the Big Bang. So information is moving. You just can't prove it, or you can't. Now, of course, it's all just random. Well, maybe that's true. But you have the elements there for a vast quantum computer. And it could be that the mind might be able to tap that somehow. So it's fascinating. I mean, you have the building blocks are there for theory, but the data, we need more data. It's like a difficult thing to research right now.
Yeah.
Let me turn it over quickly to Harvey, who had another question. Just want to make sure he had an opportunity to ask that before we...
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Actually, Ed brings up a very interesting point when he talks about quantum physics, and that is that many quantum physics believe that we have an energy field, and I was just wondering if Rui has thought about the possibility that energy field has, as Ed was suggesting, an intelligence to it.
Again, we cannot discard, well, when I say we, biologists or scientists in general, we cannot discard that is possible. But I think some of the things that Ed was saying, actually, I think we can explain them with, again, systems biology and so on, right? That atoms can form things that are much more complex, including supercomputers, right? That would be much more, again, that emergence, right? That the total is more than the parts, right? So, so about, again, so remind me about the question.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think it's possible that energy field has a form of intelligence?
So, as you probably know, historically, there is an old, long-standing trend of humans to see the world like that. That is called vitalism, right? Vitalism is trying to give, also not really a purpose, but to give agency to small structures like atoms or cells. And I think this is one of the things that I think more in vogue nowadays. I see a lot of people, scientists, biologists, trying to recover that. For me personally, what I see a bit dangerous in that way of thinking is the same thing as I said for near-death experiences. Is that I see so many, historically, so many attempts of having a kind of vitalism that it does seem to be more a trend than something that is real, because every time they come with different stories, people that are trying to be vitalists, that will be my concern. It seems to be more a product of the time. And of course, now in a holistic moment, clearly there is a huge change now. We were reductionists for 2 centuries, and clearly that is not enough. And I completely agree with Ed and everything. In science, when I teach in medical school, I always say, we now know that reductionism is not enough. Why? For instance, cancer. You know, the cancer was the main propagator of change in science right now. Because cancer, you cannot address cancer. It's too heterogeneous to address it with reductionist ideas. I don't know if you know Craig that created the human genome, and they invested a lot of millions of dollars to decode the human genome, right? Publicly and privately. He was asked by the Science journal 4 years ago, so everything we learn about the genome and everything, what do they do for cancer and human health? And Craig himself, the one that should say that everything is very good, he said, not so much, because we cannot understand the whole. We are just going to the parts, to the genes. So clearly there was a change of mentality. We know that we now have to be more holistic, systems biology, etc., right? So again, I think that's why now we are going back to some of these theories like vitalism. I don't know if you know, but reductionism of people like Descartes, etc., what we call enlightenment was a reaction. We always have these reactions against whom? Against the vitalists and against the German romantics, Goethe and everything. So now I think there is also a counter reaction to reductionism. It is very interesting to see in history. The Greeks were very holistic, as you know, philosophy, biology, everything together. Then the Romans were very reductionist as a reaction, and they said famously, science is to build roads. Then you have Renaissance, very holistic, and the Arabs, especially before that, were very holistic, right? Alchemy and all these things. Then there was a counter-reaction with Enlightenment, especially against the German romantics, that were also a bit more mystical, a bit more holistic. And now we are in reaction again. So what I don't know if it's part of the reaction to try to see the world again in a more vitalistic way, or that we are going towards a more reality, a more vision of reality nowadays. That's why I'm a bit concerned with any type of vitalism, because I saw it a lot in history. So that a single atom or a single cell can have some idea or agency as the whole world. And I don't know. I will be very skeptical about that, but it's a possibility again, because we cannot be sure about anything. The only thing I'm saying that historically I saw many attempts, because again, for humans, it will be amazing if any of our atoms and cells can be a whole thing by themselves, right? We will not really die because our atoms are going to other animals. We will be still part of Rui Diogo. And we are in terms of the atoms itself. But we really want to have an afterlife also of our cells and atoms being something Rui Diogo. What I really don't think in terms of consciousness that they will be, but perhaps, as Ed said, perhaps some studies show that perhaps there is a possibility of that. So, but what I'm saying is that naturalistically, we can explain why humans would like to think that that is the case, right?
Yeah, thank you, Rui. And I agree that there are great dangers in any of these beliefs getting out of hand, and yet there's a part of me that still believes or thinks, I guess I could say, that many of these things can be very constructive in our evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll have to leave it at that, I guess.
Yes, yes. Thank you very
It's
much.
like it's like in Star Wars, the Force can go in both directions.
Yes, yes. Clearly, no, reductionism made horrible. I made not horrible things. Reductionism led to a moment that we could not do more science because we have to be moralistic. But at the same time, the number of lives saved by vaccination, that is one of the landmarks of reductionism, because that is good. That is the good part of reductionism. One vaccine for one bacteria. That they are really good at, and they did amazing things, and they saved millions of lives. So I'm not criticizing reductionism itself. It did amazing things for humans. But now there is the moment to go a bit farther, because now we are not dealing with one virus or one bacteria, but we are dealing with things like cancer and etc. And for that, it's not enough to be reductionist, clearly, right? It's much more complex than that.
Well, think about all the incredible bacteria that we have in our own bodies that are helping us survive.
Precisely. That was also the beginning of the end.
The invasion of the mitochondria.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end of reductionism. These studies that show that actually most cells in our body, not even more cells in our body are cells of bacteria than what we call of our cells, right? Exactly. So that is the end of reductionism, and that actually I teach that in medical school, because one of the things we did bad, and actually unfortunately with COVID we are going to do bad again, was the overuse of antibiotics. Antibiotics were what led to the increase of asthma and all these diseases, because we need bacteria sometimes, the good ones, of course, that co-evolved with us. That's why kids born in cesarean, they have to have now these implants from the poop of the mother, what seems crazy, because we need those bacteria. And that reductionism, that bacteria are bad, and all these things were really bad for us. That's why doctors in the US don't give so much antibiotics now, fortunately, to small kids. But now with COVID, all these bad things we did for 20, 30, 40 years are unfortunately coming back, because now we really do need to use and to be paranoid with all these things. But I hope it will not get to the wrong direction after all this is done.
So, yeah, this is fantastic stuff, and I just, we are at 3:30, so I want to just wrap this up briefly. I want to first of all thank all of the bacterial collectives who have been able to join us today, for coming and being part of this. I hope you had enjoyed it as much as we did. I do want to share a couple of pieces of information with you as you, pardon me, I swallowed wrong. As you're kind of closing this out, maybe in your own mind. The next meetup that we have is going to be on November 7th. As you can see on the screen, it's going to be a talk on the heart and the field of collective consciousness by Roland McCready. If you do have suggestions, and in fact, a couple of people have talked about this in the chat already, and we're certainly capturing all of that. But if you have suggestions, or if you're interested in presenting a topic at a future meetup, we encourage you to reach out to us. Try to send those kinds of emails over to info@ICRL. We do have going on a weekly discussion session that goes for about an hour and a half on Sunday afternoons. And if anybody's interested in that, reach out to me because I'm doing all the coordination for that. I can give you more information and put you on the list to get announcements. That's not a commitment. It's just so that you have the option of doing that. And then lastly, I did want to just reiterate an earlier point. If there is an opportunity here, if you've appreciated the talk, please do consider making a donation in support of this. This is, and when we talk about this, don't feel that you've got to, we're not asking you to dig deep and, oh, here's $50 or whatever. Even if you can just donate $1, that all those little bits really do add up to make a difference. And so we appreciate you giving that thought, and that link is now just recent in the chat. And in the interim of that, I just want to say one last time a big thank you to Rui for sharing all of that with us. We'll be making those slides available, but consistent with the last time I heard you talk, fascinating stuff, and just hours of discussion I'd love to follow up with. So one of these days we'll make that happen.
We will. Thank you very much.
So thanks to everybody.
Thanks.